Hey, it's me, Lex. Welcome back to another class overview. Today I have the Swashbuckler for you. Swashbuckler is kind of an in-between of a rogue and a more combat-oriented class. I have 3 builds prepared for you today. Catface, the level 2 Swashbuckler, Slow and Sturdy, the level 5 Swashbuckler, and Eyes Behind the Helm, the level 7 Swashbuckler. As it so happens, I've built all 3 of these accidentally as strength-based swashbucklers. Swashbuckler has the ability to be built in a dexterous or strength-based manner because it is a martial class, though its class boost is locked to dexterity, so that is kind of the intended path you can go. But we'll get into it when we go through. We're at the start here. Catface, the level 2 wit style swashbuckler. Swashbuckler functions, it's kind of a mouthful saying it over and over again, swashbuckler. The class functions primarily through gaining Panache, which gives you bonuses to your movement speed, bonuses to your damage, and bonuses to a few skill checks, primarily acrobatics, and then one determined by your style. You can also expend Panache if you have it to do finishers, which are particularly lethal attacks that have special abilities tacked on. As you can see over here, the precise strike bonus, when I have Panache, I do 2 extra damage. And if I decide to do a finisher, it is 2d6 extra damage instead. The standard finisher that all swashbucklers come packaged with is the confident finisher, where you make a strike, and even if you miss, but don't critically miss, you still deal half of your precise strike damage to the target. So the 2d6 here, if you expend your Panache and strike, even if you miss, you'll still do half of whatever you roll on the 2d6. Catface here has selected the wit style, which gives you training in diplomacy, and the bon mot skill feat. Bon mot is you kind of point at someone, make a quick witty joke, and it can throw them off of their game, giving them a penalty to their will, saves and DC, until they're able to retort with an action of their own. And then additionally, you gain Panache during an encounter whenever you succeed at a bon mot against a foe. This naturally leans into kind of a support play style for Catface here, which is why we have picked up a very high charisma score and the one for all class feat at level 1, which allows us to, as an action, prep to aid an ally within 30 feet using diplomacy no matter what. And because we're wit, we even get to gain Panache off of it if we exceed a very hard DC for our level when we roll to aid. That'll get more likely as we level up and gain more bonuses stacking on top, giving us a higher likelihood of outperforming the scaling DC. We're also going to pick up armor proficiency, which allows us to use medium armor instead of just light armor, so that we can put a few more points into strength here, and unconventional weaponry to both gain access to and gain proficiency with the Tamchal Chakram. This is a thrown weapon, which means that if you decide to throw it, your attack roll will be based off of your dexterity score, but you will still add your strength to damage, which you usually do not do on ranged attacks. It can still be used as a melee attack, a melee weapon. It has the agile trait, so it suffers less from the multiple attack penalty, and it has the deadly d6 trait, so on critical hits you'll be dealing even more damage. The idea here is kind of that you have the versatility in a pinch to be able to throw this, and at later levels you can gain things like the returning rune so that you can use it without losing access to your weapon. And stacking deadly on top of your normal finishers allows for extremely explosive damage if you land a critical hit on a finisher, even more so than the default. At level 2, we're going to fill out our reaction with Charmed Life. This is a very solid reaction feat that Swashbuckler gains access to. It allows you to, when you would attempt a saving throw but haven't rolled yet, gain a +2 circumstance bonus to the triggering save as a reaction. So that's 10% less chance to fail, 10% less chance to critically fail. It's pretty great. And it has an equivalent that we will be getting into later. Additionally, picking up the Catfall skill feat. There wasn't anything particularly thematic to the build, unfortunately, but as a swashbuckler, acrobatics is a very potent skill for you because it is the skill that all swashbucklers can gain their panache from if you tumble through an enemy using your acrobatics. And as far as the rest of our gear goes, Catface picked up a healer's toolkit, a backpack with all of the standard adventuring gear, and has 16.5 gold left over for whatever you might want, or just savings. You can pick up some elixirs, what have you. Moving on to level 5, we have Slow and Sturdy. Slow and Sturdy is a gymnast swashbuckler, where in addition to the standard acrobatics, you focus on athletics, becoming trained in it, and gaining panache whenever you succeed on a grapple, shove, or trip against a foe. As such, we've opted in for very high strength, though we are still keeping up with our dexterity scaling because it contributes to our reflex saves. Very high constitution, because we're going to be in melee attempting to grapple enemies and trip them. And then we put our last points into wisdom to keep our will saves up along with us. At level 1, we pick up double armor proficiency so that we can get some heavier equipment, specifically splint mail, though it could be any variety of the heavy armors. And our class feat is going to be Disarming Flare. When you succeed at an athletics check to disarm, you gain panache because you're a gymnast. In addition to some buffs that I believe were invalidated by the remaster's changes to the disarm action. I could be wrong, there might be some nuance in that. I have not checked, but Swashbuckler will, I believe, be getting a... Yes, it will. It'll be getting some new changes in Player Core 2, so I'm excited to see what they do with this, or maybe it just goes away. Moving on to level 2, we're going to pick up Nimble Dodge. The default flavor of this feat is perhaps a little contradictory to the idea. How are we nimbly dodging around our opponent if we're grappling them? But as a reaction, if you're not encumbered, when a creature targets you with an attack and you can see them, you can use your reaction to get a +2 circumstance bonus to AC against it. So this could be kind of you maybe hunkering down, like blocking their attacks as you're grabbing them. Additionally, we're going to be picking up the Titan Wrestler's skill feat, which allows us to disarm, grapple, reposition, shove, and trip creatures up to 2 sizes larger than you, or up to 3 if you're legendary in athletics, so that we can continue to consistently lock down enemies and utilize our primary feature to its greatest potential. At level 3, we are going to pick up the Shield Block general feat because we are wielding a shield in our offhand, and this will give us some more survivability, an additional use for our reaction, in addition to being able to use actions on our turn, raising our shield, interposing it between ourselves and the foe that we're kind of grappling or messing with the movement of, so that it is harder for them to hit us. We're also going to be picking up the Rapid Mantle Stylish Trick feats. Stylish Tricks at level 3, 7, and 15. You gain a skill feat that has to be for acrobatics or the trained skill from your swashbuckler's style. This is how it's kind of like Rogue, where Rogue gets a skill feat every level, and they can just grab any skill feats. Swashbuckler keeps up with its skills in a somewhat similar way. Rapid Mantle here allows us to, when we grab an edge, which is a reaction you can use when you're falling past a ledge or falling into a pit. You can use your reaction to attempt to grab it with your hands. This allows you to, when you succeed at that, pull yourself onto the surface and stand. You are also able to use athletics instead of a reflex save. And if you climb or leap to within 5 feet beneath the top of an edge, you can pull yourself onto the surface and stand for free as part of that action. It opens a lot of maneuverability up in areas where you are able to utilize climbing and grabbing edges. Although, unfortunately, I believe grabbing an edge requires you to have both hands free. Yes. But you were able to sheath your shield, for example, and make a large leap across a pit. Or even, I believe with the remaster, they changed shields to be strapped to your arm and take an action to wield. I need to double check the specifics of how that works and if that would allow you to utilize this ability more effectively. Additionally, at level 3, though, all swashbucklers gain opportune riposte. Whenever a foe within your reach critically fails a strike against you, you can either attempt to strike them or disarm them as a reaction. It's not a very common occurrence, but it is very fun whenever it does happen. Additionally, your speed bonus from Swashbuckler having Panache increases at level 3, and then again at 7th, 11th, 15th, and 19th. So this gives you a lot of speed and allows you to kind of control the battlefield more than a lot of other classes have access to. At level 4, we're going to be picking up the Monk dedication. It just has the requirements of strength and dex of +2. It gives you the Powerful Fist class feature and a skill training. Powerful Fist makes our fist attacks D6s and not suffer a penalty for making lethal attacks. We're also going to be picking up the Powerful Leap skill feat so that we can leap even farther. So that combined with our Panache means that under the effects of Panache, we can leap 20 feet and use Rapid Mantle and our reaction to make an athletics check to grab an edge and pull ourselves up onto a surface 25 feet away. Very, very effective. And then finally at level 5, we're going to be picking up Clever Improviser. It's a human feat that allows you to attempt skill actions that require you to be trained if you're untrained, and lets you add your level to your modifiers. Overall, this build focuses on being able to run up to enemies, mostly trip and or grab them, and then get some damage in, utilize some reactions to mitigate damage. It's a very controlling playstyle, but you can also repeatedly, with your finisher and the fact that you're going to be gaining Panache whenever you succeed at a grapple, a very effective cycle you could pull on, say, one guy you're bullying really hard, is you run up to him, you use a action to attempt to grapple him. If you succeed, he's held, and then you can use your confident finisher to attack with your unarmed attack. And even if you fail, you'll still do some damage. And then you can repeatedly do that every turn, just continuing the grapple and then hitting him. As for our gear on Slow and Sturdy here, we have the heavy armor, a steel shield with a reinforcing rune to make it more resilient, and hand wraps of mighty blows, plus a lifting belt for bonuses to athletics checks. This was stretched exactly across the budget of gear for a character at this level, but you could obviously change things around depending on what you would like. Perhaps drop the shield and the shield block feat and invest in more damage. or remove nimble dodge, move the monk dedication back a bit, and then pick up something like the gorilla stance for D8 unarmed attacks, etc. There's a lot you can do with a build like this. Gymnast is probably my favorite of the Swashbuckler styles. Moving on to our final Swashbuckler here, this is Eyes Behind the Helm, level 7 Braggart Swashbuckler, which trains you in intimidation and gives you panache whenever you successfully demoralize a foe. We're going to be taking Intimidating Glare at level 1 so that we can ignore the penalty for not sharing a language with creatures when we attempt to demoralize them. And we're going to be picking up Unconventional Weaponry so that we can gain access to and utilize the Dueling Sword, which is a D8 one-handed finesse weapon, allowing us to pull off our finishers with the highest damage die of any of these characters. We're also going to grab the Your Next class feat, which whenever we reduce an enemy to 0 hit points, we can, as a reaction, immediately attempt to demoralize a creature that you can see and that can see you, with a +2 circumstance bonus. This is actually important right here, and I'll get into this again in a moment with Battle Cry, but subordinate actions, as the demoralize is here in Your Next, are modified according to the description of the ability that is utilizing them. Demoralize usually has a range of only 30 feet, but because this description is saying that your target has to be a single creature that you can see and that can see you, that's overriding the default targeting restrictions and allowing you to utilize it outside of that 30-foot range to demoralize things as long as you can see them and they can see you. This is kind of in universe conceptualized as you're just destroying the enemy that you reduce to 0 hit points, and it scares the person that is watching, one of their allies. And then if you gain legendary proficiency in intimidation, you can use this as a free action, which really opens up turns and the ability to use your reaction in general. Although it's not every turn you're going to be downing something, and particularly because you have to be the one to do it for this to trigger, it means that your reaction will still be free a decent amount of the time. At level 2, we're going to pick up Dueling Parry, where if you're wielding a single one-handed melee weapon and your other hand is free, you can use an action to basically raise a shield. It gives you the same circumstance bonus to AC. We're also going to be picking up Quick Coercion. This build is very, very tightly built into maximizing the potency of the intimidation skill. This allows you to, in social encounters, coerce a creature in a single round instead of a minute. And coercion is utilizing your intimidation skill to be able to get people to do things they don't want to do, that you want them to do. At level 3, we're going to be picking up Fleet. This is just so that in addition to our speed bonus from Panache, we can go much, much faster. And of note, the speed bonus from Panache does in fact stack with Fleet, which is very nice. We're also going to be picking up Intimidating Prowess here, which if you have a strength of at least +3 and you're an expert in intimidation, you get a +1 circumstance bonus to coercion checks and demoralize checks, as long as you can physically menace the target. This is somewhat vaguely worded. Some take it to mean that you're like actually intimidating over the creature, and so you could fail to do so if the creature was large enough or strong enough. Some take this to mean it's more of just about posing yourself and them being able to see you. Regardless, this also allows us to bypass the check penalty for not sharing a language, it gives us this bonus, and the bonus gets better when our strength score is higher. A level 4 will be taking Swaggering Initiative, and this is where I need to note especially 2 triggers cannot be used. Well, 2 reactions of any kind cannot be used off of the same trigger, but that's where you have to get very comfortable with the trigger wordings. Swaggering Initiative here, when you are about to roll initiative, as a free action, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to your roll and can interact to draw a weapon. This means that we will not be getting surprised, and I'll touch on the trigger wording in a minute here. We'll also pick up Terrifying Resistance, so that whenever we demoralize a creature for the next 24 hours, we get a bonus to saving throws against its spells. It won't come up a ton, but whenever it does, it'll be very nice. We'll also be picking up General Training at level 5 for Group Coercion, so we can intimidate up to 5 targets instead of 1 in a single round, coercing. And then that increases to 10 if we're an expert, which we are, 25 if we're a master, which we will be, and 50 if you're legendary. So with this, you can intimidate entire crowds with a single check. At level 6, we'll pick up Vexing Tumble. This is kind of a partner feat to the basic action Tumble Through. This allows us to stride up to half our speed as an action and roll an acrobatics check, comparing the result to the reflex DC of each foe whose reach you began in or entered during the movement in sequence. And this is entering their reach, not having them within your reach. Which means if you're going up against, say, a giant or a dragon, anything with a really long attack, it's still going to trigger on them. On a critical success, you don't trigger reactions from them. They're off guard to you until the end of your turn, and you gain Panache. On a success, you don't trigger reactions and gain Panache. On a critical failure, your movement immediately stops when you enter their reach, or you don't move at all if you began in their reach, which is very unfortunate. But these 2 effects on the critical success and success are very important. There are a lot of enemies that can really lock down you and your party, and particularly with Swashbuckler, where you want to be closing those distances and then getting out. Having the ability to bypass reactions in any way is very important, and being able to simultaneously off-guard things and or gain Panache means that this is an incredibly potent tool for keeping your potency up on the battlefield. We'll also be picking up Lasting Coercion. Whenever you successfully coerce someone, the maximum time they comply increases to a week. Still determined by the GM, however. Legendary increases to a month. So now we can make up to 25 people do what we want for up to a week with an intimidation check. This, again, will really depend on if your GM runs social encounters, but it's good to note, and it's very thematic for Eyes Behind the Helm. And then finally, at level 7 here, we're going to pick up 2 more intimidation skill feats. Terrified Retreat, where when we critically succeed at demoralizing a target that is lower level than us, they are fleeing for a round, and fleeing means that they need to spend all of their actions moving as far away from you as possible. They can't attack you. They can't move towards you. They have to go away. Even though this is limited to targets lower level than you, it does still have a lot of ability for opening things up in that you'll be removing flanking enemies, extra hit points from the battle, etc. And even, depending on the situation, some creatures might then reassess the situation a round or 2 later and be like, actually, I'm just a little guy, and you guys are beating up my boss. I'm gonna go. You know, it'll always depend on the adventure, but this has a lot of opportunity for both mechanical and narrative benefit. And then finally, this is what I was building up to with the talk about triggers battle cry when you roll initiative, as opposed to up here when you're about to roll initiative. So this happens before rolling, and this is triggered by rolling. You may yell a mighty battle cry and demoralize, and once again here we have subordinate actions modifying restrictions. An observed foe. Instead of the 30-foot range, it is just a foe that you can see as a free action. If you're a legendary in intimidation, you can use a reaction to demoralize your foe when you critically succeed at an attack roll as well. So this will give us even more potency down the line. As you can see, a lot of these features are building on top of one another and turning Eyes Behind the Helm into an absolute menace to deal with. They're simply in studded leather armor, though perhaps with a very scary metal cowl covering their eyes and face. And then they have a demon mask that perhaps could also be the thing in front of the face, giving a bonus to intimidation checks, a bracelet of dashing for a bonus to acrobatics checks to maximize the potency of that vexing tumble, and then an adventurer's pack, and 310 gold left over for whatever you would like. Anyways, this has been my overall class overview of the Swashbuckler. I think it's a very potent class. I find its design very interesting in how it kind of takes the action economy of the Magus, where you use your big potent striking attacks that you kind of want to be getting off repeatedly, your finishers specifically for Swashbuckler, are more or less two action activities, just like a spell strike, but they're broken down into these smaller actions so that it not only opens up versatility, but even stacks different benefits on top of them, like being able to demoralize while you're charging up your big attack, or even getting that benefit from grappling enemies, stuff like that. It gives you a lot of flexibility and potency on the battlefield within your style and within the class overall. I quite like the balance that it strikes between being a skill class and a combat class with stylish tricks, and I think Panache is a very flavorful and very fun mechanic. Swashbuckler is really best played if you're able to fully roleplay out and kind of conceptualize in the universe what's going on. You know, I could walk up any day and say, oh, I'm a braggart, I'm going to roll to demoralize with my you're next. But I find that Swashbuckler is most fun, and because of the note here in the Panache discussion about GM discretion when you do particularly daring actions, even sometimes mechanically rewarding, to be very emphasized on the role play with a Swashbuckler. I think it's definitely a unique enough class to stand on its own, even though it is not one of my favorite classes personally to play. I have seen some people levy the idea that it should have been a rogue archetype. I think that it maybe could have functioned in that manner, but I think that what we have now is better than that, and ultimately has resulted in a very interesting and very fun class. There's a lot you can do with it, building into intelligence skills, building into strength or dexterity, being backline or a little bit closer, although your finishers have some varying levels of power that I find a little interesting. Things like, say, the precise finisher here. If you pick this up, it modifies your confident finisher to do its full precise strike damage instead of half. I find designs like that a little intriguing because of the fact that they are kind of building onto the idea that you're going to fail. Whereas I see the finishers effect more for the 3d6 additional damage, not for the fact that it'll do half of 3d6 even if I miss. But those are just little nitpicks and interesting things to think about when building. Very good class. Let me know what you thought below. Let me know if there are any classes you would like to see next. And I will see you next time.